the direct power of the church was replaced by the euphoria of the individual. And this took time to achieve. And one of the first attempts to instill individualism were a small number of individuals whose notoriety was their chief claim to fame. So you have characters such as Casanova. Casanova is the famous lover of about 500 women across Europe, etc., who enters into one liaison and moves off into another, and he lives this marvelous life. He's like a buccaneer, if you like, and he's traveling across Europe. And this is the way that European history introduced the philosophy of the Enlightenment. And then you have other men such as Cagliostro. I don't know if you've heard of Cagliostro.
Yes, I have, yeah.
Okay, Cagliostro. Cagliostro, unknown to many people, just like Casanova, was an agent of Venice. The Venetians were clever men, and they had a long-term aim, and their long-term aim was occultism by the introduction of a secularized society, a wholly secularized society. But the authority, such authority as there would not be theological, it would be fraternal.
And when you say that also, I guess also that in terms of definition, in terms of when you're using the terms before like Satanism or satanic, that I guess that you're using that in the context of if you actually analyze what the theology, if you will, of Satanism is, which is individualism actually in one way, isn't that right?
Yes, to the extent that, to the extent that evil is a corruption of good, and that what is truly great in music is like everything else. What is truly great in music is what serves people. He who is the greatest is the servant of all. So either there has to be service attached to what we're doing before it has any value in reality, yeah?
Okay.
But the corruption of this is to present men who have achieved things because the music industry tells you they've achieved things.
Yeah, right, exactly. Yeah.
And that there's a big difference there.
It is, absolutely. So it's interesting also to note that you mentioned that some of this might have moved, the centers, if you will, have moved to London, and it has been a kind of a traveling through Europe, I guess, in that sense, from Venice up to Vienna and then further on to London. But is there anything else you'd like to say about the Holy Roman Empire, their role in this, maybe the breakdown of that, or how that tried to survive maybe through music or through that propaganda?
It was an interesting thing. It was not simply the breakdown of the Holy Roman Empire and the emergence of a secularized society, but the British Empire started to show its true colors in the late 18th century, the early 19th century. It had been Romanized from the very beginning, at least as far as the elites were concerned. King George III, I think we mentioned him last time we spoke. King George III, in the Treaty of Versailles in 1783, notice this date, 1783, when at the Treaty of Versailles, he describes himself as the arch-treasurer of the Holy Roman Empire. You can see, if you check that out sometime, the 1783. Now, George III is supposed to be a Protestant king of England, but the Treaty of 1783 makes it clear that George III is an arch-treasurer of the Holy Roman Empire. Well, hang on a minute. So the truth always comes to the surface that the elites of England since 1066 had been largely loyal to the papacy, especially in the Jacobite rebellions and all the rest of it. The real power lay with the feudalists, with the bloodlines, etc.
Yes.
And if it wasn't for that fact, England would never have been able to become an empire. There were safe hands to allow the emergence of the British Empire. The British Empire was funding large parts of Germany in the second half of the 18th century. But that too is hidden from history. How can England be funding parts of the Holy Roman Empire? But it was. Really and this absolutely. Maria Theresa was receiving large amounts of money through the East India Company. The East India Company had very big bases in Hamburg, Berlin, etc., Vienna. They had a very cozy relationship. Now, this had nothing to do with ordinary people. This was happening at the higher levels of society.
Yes.
It didn't change the life of German people or English people, but this is the real, call it the real politic of what was happening. The British Empire appeared on one hand to be completely independent of Rome, but on the other was the emergence of internationalism. And Britain, to its shame, Britain became the center of a globalized or nearly globalized British Empire. But it was no different, in fact, than the defunct Holy Roman Empire. In fact, it has exactly the same characteristics. It has the City of London as a financial institution is undoubtedly an integral part of globalism.
Absolutely. A long history there. And again, you have this relationship with a lot of, people or the royal bloodline that came out of Austria and Germany as well, up and migrating, if you will, up to the British Isles. And it's speculated even that many of those bloodlines in return came from the Venetian bloodlines as well. That's one strand of that research as well. So again, we can see the connection there of these families and these bloodlines moving from Venice to Vienna and then later up to London as well. Yeah. Yes,
absolutely. And another one, of course, would be the, which is very rarely mentioned, is the I don't know if you've looked really, really, really far back before the time of Christ into the Babylonian and then the Assyrian Empire. The Assyrian Empire, they took over the same mystery religions as Babylon or Sumeria. It traveled from the east to the west. Civilization, so-called, traveled from the east to the west. And in 800 AD, the Assyrians invaded the land that is called Israel or Palestine, and it also invaded Egypt. And these mystery religions were extremely powerful entities. They took over those countries, and it was from there, it was from this corruption that another religion rivaling the Jewish religion took over. So you had your Pharisees and Sadducees. You had a corruption reaching climax or crisis point at the time of Christ. You had a Roman Empire married together with the religious world of its time in Christ's day, and a lot of these people were deeply involved with fraternities also. Yeah. So this is not a new thing. It's not something that's happened in the Christian world. The drive of occultism, or call it Satanism, which in those forms was Moloch worship or the sacrifice of human beings and things like this. These things swept across the world, and in the pre-Christian times, they were exported into Europe, so that when the Roman Empire was Christianized, inverted commas, all that meant was there was a rubber stamp which said that this country is now Christianized.
Right.
But the truth is, of course, that most of the population were as pagan as they had been before the rubber stamp was invented.
That's an interesting point there, Robert. And to me also, that means that it, from my perspective, it also means that the people who were in Europe at that time, various people before they were Christianized, they had their own version of paganism, of course. Then Christianity moved in, and And that to me is another form of a pagan religion, so to speak, is another form of the mystery religions, but it's reshaped a little bit, reformatted, if you will, or reformatted in that sense to me.
That's right. Yeah.
And that's an interesting aspect, because there's so many, so many different cults around, and it feels like it's just a continuation of different, cults from my perspective. And we've been given a bad version, if you will, of that original pagan religion. That's from my point of view.